Welcome to Good Game, the show for gamers, by gamers. I'm Hex.
And I'm Bajo.
This week we return to the streets of Los Santos and we bring our friends when we take GTA online.
I don't know why we're standing.
Should we all be wearing a helmet?
No, only I get to wear the helmet.
Oh no!
And some old school beat 'em up action with Dragon's Crown.
Plus, the world has gone to the pigs in Amnesia, a machine for pigs.
Listen, Papa. Hold the egg to your ear. You can hear the sea.
Plus, Goose looks at the history of Australian gaming mags, and it's the final Tiny Power ever.
But before all that, can you guess the game for this week? Hex, your news is over there.
Yeah.
Go get it. And read it.
Good game.
Rapper Daz Dillinger has issued Rockstar Games a cease and desist order, claiming they've used 2 of his songs in Grand Theft Auto 5 without his permission. Dillinger says Rockstar approached him to use the tracks Sea Walk and Nothing But the Cavi Hit. He refused their offer of just over $4,000 for both songs, calling the offer offensively low. However, both tracks appear in the game, and Dillinger is now requesting Rockstar either make a better offer or recall and destroy all unsold copies of the game. And now, over to the Esports desk. The 4th annual Shadowloo Showdown hit Melbourne with fierce competition from local and international players, duking it out in all the latest fighters. Virtua Fighter 5 champ Alex MD bested his world-class rival Iron Mike to win undefeated using the flashy Jackie.
Last chance, looking for the low. Oh, and had to land with low punch of all things. Yes.
While Tekken Tag Tournament 2 had Korea's JDCR dominate with some world-class defense beating rival Looper 9-0.
That's bullshit.
And in the Super Smash Bros. Event, local team Dekar and Red Act took out the melee part of the competition, while Brawl saw Canadian entry Tin Man make an unusual character choice with Olimar. But Clever Play saw him overwhelm his opponents with a brutal barrage of attacks.
Man takes it very convincingly, exceptional showing from the young man.
Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 had Abigail from Japan as the crowd favourite, fighting through with an unusual team of Tron, Thor and the incredible She-Hulk.
He can't afford to lose Tronny right now. This could be a big ender right now for Abigail.
Abigail put on some heart-stopping, crowd-pleasing comebacks, but it wasn't enough to stop Singapore's Xian from taking out his 2nd tournament win, after also claiming the King of Fighters 13 title. And in the grand final Super Street Fighter 4 round, Gamerbee, famously an Adon player, ran with Yun to counter Japanese player Takedo's choice of Akuma. The switch proved to be wise, as a hard-fought battle saw Gamerbee win the first match and reset the bracket.
We are going to the final match.
But Takedo adapted quickly to impose a convincing win in the last set.
Knocked down, and it's
Chip range.
He's ultra. Oh, he DP'd.
Winning Shadowloo Showdown after 4 years of competing on Australian shores.
And here's the champion, Takedo Hajime Taniguchi. Good game.
All right, it's time to scroll some sides and up some beats in the side-scrolling beat 'em up Dragon's Crown.
You saved a village girl. You must protect her now.
Now, before we get too far into the review, there is an elephant in the room that I'd like to get out of the way.
2 elephants.
Well, yes, and chances are if you've heard anything about this game at all, then you'll know what I'm talking about.
Massive boobs.
Yes, it is massive boobs. And look, I don't want to go on about it, but look, I'll show you a little bit of what all the fuss is about, and maybe you can form your own opinion.
You'd heard of Mermaid's legendary curiosity. Morgan Lisley, shopkeeper and witch, welcomes you to her establishment.
Look, all I'm going to say is I'm just not a huge fan of the character design. I mean, I really liked the art style as a whole, but those boobs, they were just out of control. And it got to a point where it's not even really offensive anymore. It's just comical and just dumb.
I did find myself laughing at it, and at first I thought it was a bit tongue-in-cheek, but then it was just so straight-faced, and it just comes across crass and pervy, I think.
My big problem is that I couldn't look anywhere else, literally. It's just that the way they move, they don't stop moving, it's hypnotic.
My boobs don't move in the wind.
All right, well, enormous gravity-defying boobs to the side for the moment. Let's try and talk about the actual game. To start off with, you choose your character depending on how much of a challenge you want. You have your fighter, Amazonian and dwarf, who offer a more straightforward brawler type. or you can go for the ranged attacks of the wizard, elf or sorceress, who offer up a bit more of a challenge.
After a quick tutorial, you find yourself in the game's hub town. From here, you pick up quests and venture out into various dungeons and castles in search of the elusive dragon's crown. I admit I tuned out of the story pretty quickly though, Hex, because you're always coming back to town and talking to people in the town and they just go on and on and on and on and on.
A giant man in armor finishes his
skip it.
Althena, the knight extends his hand. He's
Yeah, the story just kind of gets in the way, doesn't it? Once you do get to the action though, it's pretty solid. You mostly just use one button for attacks, but different directions on the stick and jumping opens up a pretty big range of moves. Combine those with dashes, blocks, and special attacks over 6 characters and you have a lot to master.
It's exciting combat, isn't it? And the difficulty ramps up really quickly too, so it's a good thing you don't have to go in alone. You can either bring in 3 other players online or locally, or by finding piles of bones and taking them back to your town, you can resurrect NPCs to fight alongside you. But this game shines when you've got a few friends playing with you. And it gets so chaotic on the screen, at times I'd find myself just mashing, trying to figure out where I was, only to find myself in the corner just punching the air, not helping anyone.
Yeah, I think the thing that really makes you stick around though is all those fat loots. Each dungeon is littered with chests and hidden bits of loot to uncover.
Simple.
In a bit of a twist though, they don't actually show you what your loot is. You can either just sell it or pay some gold to have it appraised and find out its stats.
Yeah, it's got a bit of a 2D Diablo vibe, hasn't it? And after each mission, you've got loads of gear to play with. And of course, there's a healthy dose of RPG mechanics to flesh it all out. As you level up, you'll get to spend your experience points on either character-specific skills or ones that apply to any character.
Plus, it's quite a meaty adventure, isn't it? With a single playthrough taking anywhere between 10 to 15 hours.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of these old-school beat-em-ups, and this certainly triggered a lot of nostalgia, but I am used to them being a more arcadey affair, you know, where you sit down with some friends and have a quick bash, but 15 hours?
Yeah, it is a lot for a beat-em-up, I guess, but it seems weird to be criticising a game for too much content.
I know, well, maybe if they stopped yapping so much, we'd get through it a bit quicker. Shut up.
clad in the guild.
Final thoughts, Hex.
Well, Dragon's Crown does deliver on its promise of being a true old-school fantasy beat-em-up, but look, if I'm being completely honest, I just can't get past that character design. It's ridiculous to the point of being too distracting for me, so I'm giving it 6.5 out of 10.
Yeah, it is totally ridiculous, but I'm just so happy to have a modern beat-em-up. I miss them. I'm giving this 7.5 out of 10 rubber chickens.
Now, from spring rolls to vomit to unrequited romance, Tiny Power has taken us on a roller coaster ride of emotions.
But all good things must come to an end, so we present to you the final episode of Tiny Power.
Onto the hook! We can winch down to the ground!
Good plan, Stan.
You don't have to ask me twice!
You know, I thought having a kid would ruin my enjoyment of the zombie apocalypse, but I think it's enhanced it. They're climbing up after us!
Oh, since when can zombies climb?
Take Lewis and get on that hook. I'll lower the crane.
But that's suicide.
Just take care of my little man, okay? And look, I know you think he's named after C.S. Lewis, but actually...
I know. Wally Lewis.
Made sure he knows. And no remarrying, I don't want no tooled stepdads about.
Don't do this.
I love you, baby.
Don't do this.
Get a room!
Gilius!
Get on the hook, you tool!
You don't have to do this.
I was wrong, Aaron! You're a great father! Lewis is lucky to have you! We all should have been so lucky! Zombie slag!
Keep looking at the sky, 'cause it's getting me high. Forget the hearse, 'cause I'll never die. I got 9 lives, cat's eyes, using every one of them and running wild.
Good game.
Well, now that GTA 5's multiplayer issues have, for the most part, settled down, I think the best way to demonstrate how much fun you can have in this game is to have an office session. What do you think?
Sounds good, Hex.
All right, let's go. Oh my god, who's that erratic
Grand
driver?
Theft Auto Online is a completely separate experience to single player. It's a blending of free roam fun and set up multiplayer modes. After making a character, you're thrown into Los Santos and the mayhem begins.
Man, it's good to finally meet you.
I feel sick. I want to get out.
You'll get out when you're dead.
There are a few games that bring such a cross-section of gamers together, quite like GTA 5.
Yeah, there's just something about a giant sandbox full of toys which inspires fun times. Come to me, I've got a bicycle.
How many spare ones you got? A spare badge.
Just the one. Now there's two. And I think it's because each time you sit down, just different stuff happens. Whether it's trolling in free roam. You read my mind. Did you see me get the knife out?
No, I just assumed you would do something like that.
Or competing in jet races, there's always something to do and someone to harass.
Out in the middle of nowhere.
I've quite rightfully received complaints from my neighbours this week from laughing very loudly in the wee hours of the morning.
Much like any big online game, there's quite a bit to get your head around. Initially, menus seem fiddly and confusing. Trying to get everyone in a free roam can be tricky. And it does take around 10 hours of car stealing and drug running before you start getting more interesting missions.
Later, homie. I enjoyed our transaction.
Coupled with the launch issues and character losses, our initial impressions were fueled with frustration. But things run pretty smoothly now, and you quickly realise online really is about doing what you want, when you feel like it, with whoever wants to come along.
And the best part is, shenanigans are around every corner. I'm gonna start the mayhem, everyone.
This is a silly idea.
I'm dead. I'm getting a lift.
Oh, Jesus. This flying mess. God.
If you look to your left, you'll see the ocean, and Do you fancy a round of golf while we're here?
I don't think now at the time.
We're fine. Keep it steady.
Jump out now.
We survived.
I can't believe it.
That's amazing. Stop it! No!
Full of helium. That hurt you at all?
In the GTA 5 timeline, the online is set before the single-player story campaign, but the world is pretty much open to you from the get-go. As you level up, you'll start to be introduced to various characters with missions, earning cash, unlocking weapons, and eventually buying a house and cars to go with it. But you can also just jump into random events. You can even invite your friends to come along and chill in your pad.
Nice pad, man. Nice pad.
Which is a cool idea in theory, but you'll probably only do it once.
Oh, it's kitty cock.
There's an interesting variety of emotes, but the only one anyone ever uses is the jerk. It's so gross, and yet I can't help but laugh every time I see someone doing it. It's that flick at the end.
It is so juvenile, but my face is still sore from laughing at it. I found it especially funny in the racing lobby menus. But back to the game. I love the sense of ownership that you have over your first car. It costs you money if it gets damaged or destroyed, and that annoyed me at first. And in free roam, if you grab another car, then the cops will just engage you the moment they see you, because it's stolen. But over time, I grew to quite like this idea, and the thought of buying a garage and building up a collection of cars. And I did enjoy damaging and blowing up friends' cars, even if it did mean I had to pay their insurance costs. Why don't you come check out your car?
That's, nice.
I didn't know you had flame decals on it. Oh, there it goes. And I'm out of it.
When you get a job, that's when it's time to pull in your friends, and it's where the invite system really shines.
It is worth putting your matchmaking on closed by default, otherwise you will get flooded with randoms constantly.
Yeah, randoms cannot be trusted. But then neither can we.
No.
There's a lot of griefing in general.
What's going on there? Come on.
Do you want to take
Down the road.
Shortcut?
No shortcut.
No!
Do you want to get out of water? I found Hex's car. Hi.
Stop it! No, my cars are beautiful.
I think our favourite of the modes so far is the motorbikes versus jets.
Oh, I can just see these jets in the distance parking around.
The feeling of a jet breathing down your neck as you race along the streets is so thrilling.
Oh dear!
Oh no. Here it comes, buddy.
Yeah, that mode alone pretty much sold the online experience for me. But I was also a big fan of the dirt bike races and the jet skis. The vehicles just handle so well. I actually quite liked it when I ran out of lives because you'd go into spectator mode and it's just so good. You can do all the different angles and it's got filters.
Spectatogram.
Yeah. I was also a big fan of the missions where teams needed to hunt down an objective, such as a suitcase or a truck, somewhere in the city. It's tug-of-war chaos as each team tries to steal it back from each other.
You know, I can't think of another game that lets you go from jet races to golf in just a few button presses. GTA Online is all about variety. The game doesn't quite encourage free roam mayhem as much as I'd like though, because deaths are very costly and it can make things a bit grindy.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the co-op fights that we'd have in missions during the game, but I found that the weakest part of it was actually the deathmatch. I just didn't find it very fun because that lock-on is so good that shootouts were really about who saw the other person first.
Yeah, I mean, Rockstar have admitted that they are very much developing the online as we play. There's things like new clothes and vehicles coming, but most exciting is the content creator, which will allow you to publish your own deathmatch, races, and capture the flag.
There's also a heist board coming for your apartment and more complex heists to go with it, of course. I'm excited to see where they can go from here.
Me too. And, you know, they say the incoming cash microtransactions won't be a pay-to-win model, but I think we're going to hold off on judgment until we see that in action. Bajo, the more I played this, the more I was impressed by the ambitious task Rockstar has set for themselves with GTA Online. And it's all mostly hitting the mark. I think there is a lot of potential for this to really deliver some memorable experiences over the long term. But look, we're not going to score the online because we've already given our double 10 vote to GTA 5 as a whole, and online really is just icing on the cake.
Oh, it's not going well.
And Hex, every time I log into this game, I snob out for a bit at the lack of anti-aliasing and the jaggies, and then after about 10 minutes, I forget because it's just so beautiful.
Before we got our gaming information in bite-sized chunks of digital gossip, gaming was explored predominantly in one medium.
Megazone.
Hyper Magazine.
PC Power Play, the N64 Gamer.
Atomic.
PC Active.
Games TM.
Mean Machines. Australian Android.
Edge.
Game Informer.
PlayStation Magazine.
Working within the magazines was crazy, and I think it came through in the magazines. You could see that everyone was having fun.
I think it was a lot like music in the 1960s, and that there was evolution and revolution happening all around us, and we certainly tried to share and communicate that excitement with our readers, and we expected it to go on forever.
We were all, you know, really young. We were just sort of in love with games, and, you know, if we weren't sort of playing games at work, we were playing games with each other.
A magazine should be as fun to read as a game is to play.
I do remember having the collection. You know, I had, you know, the first 30 or 40 power plays and the first 30 or 40 hypers. You know, I remember some of those early covers. I remember the Duke Nukem 3D cover for PC Power Play, which could be the first.
Internet wasn't a thing, so you pretty much just had to rely on any information you could get from friends or that you could get from a magazine that you found on a shelf.
It was Megazone that really took gaming magazines beyond niche.
Megazone had an easy ride because they had club memberships, as well as it being sold in newsagents. Every single gamer in the country knew about Megazone and probably bought copies from time to time.
Now we take for granted the amount of information we have access to about a game with trailers, let's plays, and early access betas. But there was something special about digesting the culture of video games purely through the written word.
When you have the luxury of being the only source of information on a game for a reader, before there was internet, when there were only 2 or 3 games magazines, you also have the luxury of doing a proper job of the write-up. You could do 5 pages on one game if it was a big game. That allowed you to, as if you were telling a friend excitedly about a game, you have to play this and explain why.
If you get excited about something, it's easy to make other people excited. If you're not, it's not really worth covering.
There would be some issues where there was only one new game to review. We had to be pretty good at injecting a lot of kind of fun and humour into it.
I still think it was a case of you had to be a good writer first and care about games second, but at the same time, it was definitely more of an enthusiast sort of thing, where it was like, we love games, we love talking about games, here's all the games.
Most of the graphics were pretty basic, most of the gameplay was pretty basic, so most of what we did was just had fun, you know, we looked for the fun in it all.
Of course, it wasn't just what was inside the magazine that was the selling point.
The magazine cover is critical in terms of your sales. You know, a good or a bad cover can halve or double your sales.
If you plot the graphs out of all your magazine sales, you can tell the bad covers. You can tell exactly when a cover hasn't done the business for you. So it's very important.
It's the first thing anyone sees. It's the thing that makes most people decide to buy or not buy a magazine. So it's the ultimate thing. It's paramount. It's just so important.
To the PR industry in this country and around the world, it's obviously terrific free advertising for their game.
Having your game on the cover of a magazine is like a trophy.
Some of our best issues in Game Informer sales-wise have been our Halo cover, Batman cover, our Assassin's Creed cover, our Tomb Raider cover was a big hit.
There's others where you're just taking that little bit of a risk. For PlayStation, I spoke to the head office and said, look, I'd love to do 4 different covers for Little Big Planet. So we actually got 4 characters made up for 4 different covers all going out at the same time. And it was a little bit risky, and it worked.
But a great image doesn't always mean the biggest game of the day. Monster Hunter Freedom Unite did great guns because it was a fantastic image.
Flicking through the pages to see a score is something we all do, and we've got magazines to thank for that. But is the future of print journalism one without a number?
Scores are essential because they validate the editorial you've written.
I think that the text should come first and foremost.
I hate scores. Like, there's no scientific way of looking at a score. There's no, like, way to sit down and calculate the score.
Scores basically serve the same purpose as a box out in a magazine. It was something that grabbed people's attention. Oh my God, that game got a 10. Oh, I need to read this review.
People want to be able to just take away a sort of an essence of whether it's a good or a bad game in a few seconds. And that's your job as a games journalist, to sort of deliver what the audience wants.
In the face of getting everything you could possibly want to know about a game with just the click of a button, is there still a future in a format that's tied to the slow-turning wheels of the printing press?
You know, as the sort of speed of Australian internet increases, if we ever get there, you know, I think it's going to move much more to a video-focused content for games.
The entire world is changing, and because we've got this digitally tuned in gamer audience, they're all online. So who's buying the magazines?
We have a pretty vibrant newsstand culture in Australia, so I think for the fact that Australians like reading magazines and buying magazines, there's a lot less though, so I think that's probably telling.
In terms of the sort of, you know, the physical paper magazine, I think they'll stick around for quite a while.
There's the odd argument of a magazine as a nice, tangible, physical thing to hold, to put in your bag and read on the train, to put on the bookshelf and build up a collection.
People want to keep it, they want to be able to travel with it, and I still really like reading paper.
There's something about a print publication which would be really sorely missed, but you can't argue with the way technology is going.
Will they survive? Every publisher around the country and the world is asking themselves that every day and trying to find out solutions. It's impossible to crystal ball that one, but I hope that they survive.
Thanks, Goose. Amnesia: The Dark Descent was a downloadable survival horror game that seemed unassuming at first, but was surprisingly terrifying. The sequel, A Machine for Pigs, features new characters and a different time period and setting, but does a pretty good job of creating a skin-crawlingly eerie vibe from the moment you awaken in...
A spooky house?
Yeah, it's a spooky house.
Daddy, please don't kill me.
Awakened by the roar of a frightening machine, you have taken the role of Mandus, an industrial butcher. Through letters and recordings, you're able to piece together a few elements of what has happened over the past few months.
It is wonderful how tragedy focuses the mind. What else is that? Is it?
You're not alone in the house, however. Your 2 children are missing, and their haunting voices call out to you at every turn.
Papa, this way. There's a bad man coming.
And soon you start to receive phone calls from someone only known to you as the engineer.
My children are engaged. If you help me, I can help you release them.
He instructs you to journey into the depths of this dark mansion's cellar to fix the broken machine in order to free your children who are trapped between flooded sections. The writing is, as ever, top-notch, with beautiful poetic dialogue that cryptically reveals fragments of the story through maddened ye olde English ramblings.
This dawning epoch, this age of reason, an empire grown fat, ripe for the bleeding.
It has a bit of a slow start, I thought, mostly because the original game started with an intense mechanic right off the bat that dealt with light and impinging madness.
Yes, the darkness drove you mad, so you had to keep finding ways to light the area around you or you'd go crazy.
Yeah, exactly. This time, despite having a bit of a foggy memory, you don't have to deal with any form of insanity. You're more focused on figuring out the puzzle of getting through the house and its many doors and secret passageways. It's still a chilling environment, and the weird pig theme is made quite clear from the start, but you don't get that same sense of urgency.
No, and look, I liked that the insanity wasn't there. I don't really want to be playing with the same mechanics as the last game, but it's almost as if they just needed to replace that with something equally as challenging to add to that suspense.
You also can't interact with as many things this time around, and I did like throwing the chairs about, but part of the fun in these games is having mini tantrums with other people's stuff. Where's my children? Take that! The inventory system has been removed. It's more about keeping your eyes open for clues in the environment and referencing the letters you find, rather than piecing together found objects.
Yeah, I didn't mind that. I mean, heading down into the depths, the puzzles to unlock doors and gates aren't particularly taxing, but, you know, everything is dark and gloomy. There's that frequent roar of the machine. There's always things moving by themselves in the dark. So it does keep you on edge, but the hope of saving your children gives you courage, even as aspects of the story start to hint at strange experiments.
Yes, the deeper you delve, the darker and creepier it gets. And sure enough, you begin to encounter some pretty terrifying creatures. They're flickering. They're coming. In keeping with the theme of the game, there are horrifying pig things that come after you in the darkness.
A clever clue that you might be about to be paid a visit by one of these things is that they cause the lights around them to flicker. This is really freaky and definitely gets the heartbeat racing as you're still trying to explore the area, knowing that one of these things could be around at any corner. Ah, those squeals. No.
Just like in the first Amnesia, you can only hide, so you can't fight them, and they're attracted to light, and if you look at them, they'll come after you. Health regenerates over time if you do get damaged, so it's about hiding and keeping your eyes on the floor if you do get attacked. And that's still so terrifying, isn't it? When you can hear the creatures nearby, but you've got to keep your eyes averted or they'll come after you. Stare at the floor. La la la, everything's fine. Oh! Oh!
Yeah, it's nightmare stuff. What did you think of it overall, Bajo?
I liked it. It's definitely scary, but I like that they went for a more subtle approach. I thought there were great improvements to the level design, particularly in those outdoor areas. They made the locations open up and feel more genuine, rather than being confined to a series of rooms and corridors. I did miss the puzzles from the first game, though, and nothing can top that insanity mechanic from the Dark Descent.
Yeah, I thought this was a much better, darker story, and to me it felt like more of a sophisticated game. Something about this narrative in particular I found really horrifying. But it is a lot lighter on the scares though, isn't it? You'll be jumping a lot less, and that's a shame because I think people go into these games really craving that heart-stopping experience. I'm giving it 7.5.
I'm giving it 7 out of 10.
Good game.
So did you guess the game?
For this week. It was Princess Crown, released exclusively in Japan on the Saturn all the way back in 1997. You took on the role of Princess Gradriel de Valindia, who desires to resolve all the problems that plague her land. It was made by a dev team at Atlas, who went on to form Vanillaware, who was the developer behind this week's Dragon's Crown.
Next week on the show, we don the cape and cowl and go back to the early days of the Dark Knight in Batman Arkham Origins.
And while we're talking comic books, the world of Bill Willingham's Fables has been adapted by Telltale Games for The Wolf Among Us.
You think my job is easy? You try keeping a bunch of fables from killing each other.
Over on Spawn Point on ABC3 this weekend, Goose and Darren set sail in The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker HD.
That's it for us this week. Stay tuned for 7 days later up next. Until we meet again, Bajo out.
Hex out.